Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hit and Hustle from IrishSportsDaily.com. I'm your host, Ge Flammang, and with me, as always, is Jamie Uyeyama, Mr. Jamie University. It is Wednesday. Let's see. Oh, July 15th, Jamie? Is it July 15th today? I'm not wearing my watch. It didn't tell me. It's the 16th, Wednesday, July 16th. And I got an email, I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago, from a Irish Sports Daily subscriber who said, "Hey, Greg, it would be great if you guys did a 2-year look at Notre Dame's recruiting efforts from 2025, 2026, even though 2026 isn't completed. It's a good time to talk about it because, most of the class is committed. We're still waiting on Elijah Golden's announcement that comes on July 26th. We're going to talk about him as if he's a part of the class because we have a good feeling that he is going to be a part of the class. Notre Dame is leading for him at this moment. So we're going to talk about it as if he's part of the class. If he's not, we can revisit the conversation. But I think, last year people were looking at the class and I think they thought they were going to be pretty good. It was a pretty good class. I don't know. 2026 has really kind of elevated things to now where you look at a two-year window on the recruiting class and it looks a lot better. So we're going to talk about that for today. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. If you like what you hear today, please hit that like, please hit subscribe, please hit the notification bell. So whenever it is, we are going live. Links to the podcast are in the description below. And as always, the show is brought to you by ESQ Clothing, founded by Notre Dame alum Ge Wang. You've seen ESQ on all your favorite Notre Dame players and coaches. With over a decade of making the best custom clothing available, ESQ will help you look and feel your best in 2025. From a perfect fitting suit or sport coat, shirt or bomber jacket, or the perfect tuxedo for wedding season, check out Ge's amazing work at esqclothing.com. Book an appointment to upgrade your wardrobe today. Mention ISD. Get 10% off your entire purchase. That's esqclothing.com. Jamie, before we get started, we have a baseball update. Things are happening. New things have come to light. It didn't look good. After the first game on Monday, we got destroyed by the host team out here in Galt, California, a little bit south of Sacramento. We were playing the top seed yesterday. Walk-off win, 9-8 in the bottom of the sixth. It was absolute scenes out here. People were going crazy. So things have changed, right? We might be top 2 seeds in your group. 10 teams total, top 2 teams in your group. They advance. We want the team that beat us on Monday to keep winning and give some people some losses. We got to win out. And hopefully we've got a big time matchup with Hawaii on Friday. So we're monitoring the situation. Got an off day today. The kids were in the pool for about 5 hours last night. It was unbelievable, Jamie.
Well, they deserve to celebrate after that. And it must have been that pregame IHOP.
It was the IHOP. He had a happy face pancake, chocolate chip pancake, and I think it did it. I was talking to you before. He got on base 4 times, scored 4 runs there. He's my beautiful boy, and we're proud of him. We're proud of the Los Altos all-star team, and so we move on. Got a big game tomorrow. Got an off day today. Big game tomorrow. Big game on Friday. So I'll keep everyone abreast of that. I know everyone's excited. I know everyone's excited about Notre Dame's recruiting that's going on right now, Jamie, and that's going to be the topic of our show today. I think as you start to think about recruiting and what they're building in the last 2 classes, Jamie, how much has what they've done in June, this summer specifically, to land all the key targets that they were looking at, how much has that kind of shaped the way that you look at Notre Dame's recruiting efforts overall? And then does it make you change how you look at the 2025 class? Because sometimes you can see in conjunction, like you have a position group that stand alone by itself. I don't know. Like I don't know if it has exactly what it needs. But then you look at, but paired with the 2026s, now I kind of think I see it in a little bit different light. Has that been the case for you? How do you kind of evaluate things?
Yeah, I mean, definitely what they've done in June, absolutely flips it flips this class, but it also flips that combination of those 2 classes. Yeah. How could it not? Right. And, because I think this was such a fun exercise because you put it together, and I know our boss Mike Frank, he's done the 2 class look for years and years. He's always done this. if you really like kind of look at where they're at now for so many of these spots, and it's not like there aren't some questions there, because there's going to be some, but there's just really like a lot of spots that you're like, whew, this is look at like not everyone's going to hit. It never happens.
Yeah.
Like it never happens. Not 50% won't hit. It never happens. But when you do this well enough, you don't have to hit that many because there's so many choices of guys that are going to play. And chances are a lot of these guys are going to be very, very good. Like and I don't want to kind of spoil it, but like, man, just some of the positions, whew, like it is absolutely like, I do the big thing about it's like championship caliber rosters, because you look at like the previous national championships of the last like decade of the guys like who won in the, teams that have won in the college football playoff era. And I mean, you look where Notre Dame's going to be situated with a lot of these positions, and they're going to be in great shape in a lot of these positions.
Yeah. So let's just kind of look at the overview. If they keep it right now, as all the commits that they have in 2026 remain, and you include Elijah Golden in that, you've got 37 out of 51 are 4 or 5 stars. So that's the blue chip ratio that everyone talks about. 73% blue chip ratio for the last 2 classes. Notre Dame's about 80 or 90% for 2026. And we're talking about like, on composite, right? So that's kind of where I'm getting these numbers from. 73%, Jamie. Where would that kind of rank as a? Because I know you love to track the blue chip ratio that Bud Elliott came up with for 247. I think he came up with it when he was SB Nation at the time. So this kind of predated him kind of becoming a well-known figure. But where would 73% put Notre Dame historically with the top programs that were like winning national championships?
I mean, a lot of it, like basically everyone since 2016 has been above, except for Michigan was the only one that wasn't above 60%. Yeah. So like, I know 50% is that kind of cutoff that he's done, but for the most part, you got to be over 60%. That's just what it is. And if you look at where, Georgia and Alabama and Ohio State, really, they're like 80%. So if you aren't, like 60% to even 80% is a huge gap. Like that is a big gap to make up. And 70% to 80%, 73% to 80%, which, is general, is like, I would say like the top 3 programs are hovering around 80. Like that is, you can not just make that up. A lot of it is just, if you retain a lot of those guys better than some of these other schools, you're going to be in as good or better shape than them. And that's something that like Notre Dame has done. If you look at the 2022 and 2023 class, they, out of the blue chips they signed less than a whole bunch of other schools, but they've retained more. They've retained a higher percentage and an actual raw number that is higher than any of the other like blue blood programs that they're competing with for national championships. So, I mean, obviously there's a difference there with some of these guys are 5 stars, something, whatever, but still, like, it just in general, when you're keeping guys that are, blue chips and you're keeping them in your program for, 4 years, most of those guys who stick around for 4 years end up at least being contributors, and a whole bunch of them end up being like NFL players and that high level contributors.
Yeah, let's talk about the most, I guess, loaded position groups. When you combine them for the last 2 years, my first thought goes to defensive back. When you have Mark Zachary, you have Dallas Golden, you have Cree Thomas, you have Ethan Long, you have Jadon Blair from 2025, right? So you look at that group and you think, man, that's some real talent right there. And then you back it up with what they're doing with another 5-man class of Joey O'Brien, Kari Adams, Nick Reddish. My mind's blanking right now because I'm on the spot and it's live TV.
Chasten Smith.
Chasten Smith and Ethan Pouncey. And And it's like that's even better, right? So like you would have looked at the 25 classes like that. This is a very, very good defensive back class. They back it up in 2026 with one that's even better on paper. And so that's when you look at one and you say that's a premier defensive backfield going forward into 2026, 2027, 2028, 2029. Like is if you just stack those guys and they all remain, they probably won't, just because that's just the nature of college football right now. But like the ones who hit will remain, and you've got a lot of guys where it's like if they hit, they are going to be serious football players.
Oh yeah, like just the sheer numbers there, and the amount of guys that I think have a chance to be develop into really high picks, like the kind of guys that the Ben Morrison types, the Leonard Moore types, the Xavier Watts types, like the Kyle Hamilton types. They've got those kind of guys. And not and how many of these guys are even like you would even put into the project? Like none of them you would put into like
that's such
their
a good
like
question.
Into like like there's some of these guys are developmental for sure. I mean, they all are, right? But
here's one. Here's one. Who is like of the 2025 guys? Who was kind of like the one where it's like, I don't really know how he fits. I think that would probably be like Cree Thomas. And he came in the spring already and looked good. So like you already kind of feel like he's going to be a hit. Like he's going to be a player to beat him out, and to beat him out for playing time. You're going to have to be really, really good. So like to your point, they don't really have that. Like Bronte Johnson is one where you look at him and you would say like that was a project. He's never played safety. So
yeah.
And by the way, he looks like he's going to be a hit too. So that's also
like maybe Brandon Logan. Yeah. Maybe Brandon Logan,
point.
You would say.
Yeah, I totally blanked on him. That's true. Yeah.
But
Brandon
he
Logan
is the guy that kind of
guy.
high level. He's the sixth guy, and he's also like an extremely high level athlete.
Yeah.
Obviously like a multi-sport, like a great baseball player too. That it wouldn't be shocking if he ends up being the best safety out of this entire group. Like it wouldn't be crazy if that happened eventually. Like I don't think he's going to come in that way, but he would be in that Bronte Johnson mold where you're like, oh, well, this guy just needed this, this, and this. And he came in and got what he needed at Notre Dame. And, to the moon. He's just shot out of a cannon. He's going to be that dude. And I think there's just so much of that there. And the thing is that could happen, and one of these other higher ranked guys doesn't hit and he could hit. And that's the kind of thing where you're looking at, where I think everybody's ceiling is so high. And that really is kind of the thing. And like, there's some, and I would say like Thomas is more of like a higher floor guy that I would put. And then like Reddish, or like they would be in the higher floor guys that to me. But it's not like they have like ultra low ceilings either. Like they could be really good players, right? And like they could be NFL guys. So, and I think that's really, Raymond Horton says, or said, let more reset the standard of like, that's the standard of like, that isn't really the standard. That is the peak. That's what guys want to try to get to. The standard is like where everybody is at in general. And I think right now you look at like the strength of Notre Dame's defensive back core and where they're at, like they're going to have one of the best DB groups in the country this year. And you just see that continuing, and they might even be better than they have been the last couple of years, where, by the way, they just, had an All-American, two-time All-American safety, and Leonard Moore was the top-rated corner in by PFF last year, and he's the top returning corner as a sophomore, and it's like a very short list of guys who've even been that for any position for PFF. And like Bebo was just unbelievable player, like who came in and for 2.5 years played at like an extremely elite level. Like that's the kind of thing where you're looking at that, where it can get to where all of a sudden you're like, wow, they can start calling Notre Dame DBU possibly after it. Like where because just enough of these guys are going to be high picks. And I also think too, you bring in all these guys and it's just like the competition that all these guys are going to, to push each other. And it's like, if you're not practicing up to a certain standard and you're not, pushing yourself to be that early on, you're going to get over recruited. Like people are going to come in and beat you out. And that's the kind of like the danger of you like not hitting it. And that is that's the best thing that Nick Saban ever did at Alabama, is he just kept that train going. And there were just so many guys there that it was like good players who would start one year would not start the next year.
Yeah.
And Clarence Lewis led Notre Dame in snaps in 2022 and was like a good player, not a great player, but he was a good player. Lost his starting job to a true freshman the next year and was still like a good reserve. And then he went to Syracuse and he was third team all ACC. He was their best corner.
Yeah.
That's the kind of what you want to have.
Let's talk about why this matters and what it means for your team. I mean, obviously, like having good defensive backs is self-evident, right? You don't need to be a football savant to understand that. But I think, we always talk about, the pass rush or the front four enhances what the DBs can do because of the aggressiveness and how they can play. How does a DB group like Notre Dame has had, and then that they are building now, how does that help a defensive coordinator game plan for the type of pressures that Notre Dame wants to bring? Because I think that's something that people don't really think about, is what you can install into your game plan and what you can work on in the offseason and the pressures you want to build and the types of coverages you want to put in. You can't put in those things if you don't have guys who you truly believe can cover in the back multiple different ways, whether it's in man, whether it's a press man, whether it's an off man, even the types of zone stuff that Notre Dame wants to do. You can't really do that if you don't have the guys that you truly believe can do that. And I think that's where Notre Dame has been, even their best teams have been kind of deficient, like in the 2017, 2018 teams, like they weren't super aggressive because they just didn't have those guys. Like Julian Love was really good. Like Troy Pye was really good, but it's like, I don't know if I trust them in press man 60% of the time. And I think now Notre Dame is kind of playing in a way where it's like we can be more aggressive, the way that the Alabamas play, the way that the Ohio States play on defense, right? Like you can be more exotic with the stuff you want to do because your DB group is so good. Like kind of talk about how the DB group helps a DC more so than the one personnel grouping helps another personnel grouping.
Well, just look at Al Golden year 1 to year 2 and year 3, and the difference at defensive back there. Also the difference when like Ben Morrison became that Ben Morrison, basically halfway through, his freshman year, they were a different defense. And you can say, oh, well, look what happened in the USC game. I mean, Caleb Williams was amazing that game, but as you always have brought up, and it doesn't get talked about enough, Cam Hart, Tariq Bracy didn't play in that game. And they didn't have the depth that they have now. They didn't have a situation where they could go into a Louisville game and say, well, Leonard Moore, you're starting this game. And, Jordan Clark's here. Oh, Rod Hurd, step in here. Like they don't have that, and they have that now. So you don't have to change who you are based on losing one guy. Like everybody remembers that 2018, Cotton Bowl. Julian Love went out and the wheels fell off. The wheels fell off. Like they couldn't, the numbers were just ridiculous. When he was out of the game, they cooked them. They cooked the secondary during that time in a way that secondary hadn't been cooked the whole year. And then compared to when he was in the game, it was a different story. And so like the depth, the just amount of talent, like you said, the be able to guys who can play like man coverage, Because that's the other thing too with that first year of Marcus Freeman as defensive coordinator too. He couldn't play the same way that he did at Cincinnati because he didn't have the same corners. He didn't have Sauce Gardner who could match up, right? Like that was a completely different thing. So I think that you having the talent there and the depth is what makes that coordinator be able to say, look, we can play any way you want to play. We can take away whatever you're going to throw at us in the passing game. You know, you got one guy that this is that dude. That's the thing that's going to make it extremely hard against Notre Dame, and they're able to kind of do that where it's not even just like say like a matchup guy where they have a guy who can go and follow someone around, but they just have the structure within their defense that they can do that, which is why like when I think about like a lot of the teams that they're going to go up against this year, and I don't see too many of like that Ohio State level of like that many guys there. If you don't have that many guys, and USC certainly looks like they got two pretty like close to elite guys. I would say, you know, Lemon is elite guy. We'll see about God, I'm blanking on his name now. Jacoby Lane. We'll see about Lane. I think he's hot and cold, right? But
yeah.
They don't have. I don't think they have the depth there, and it's just one of those things where it's like you're gonna need that kind of depth to go against because Notre Dame has the bodies and they have that there. And that's just for this year. And then you think about going forward, the further you go, you are going to play these types of teams that you have to be able to go against and know, like, we're going to play against Marvin Harrison Jr. We're going to play against Jeremiah Smith. We're going to play against these guys. And if you don't have the people that can even have a hope against those guys, you might as well not even strap up. Like, but when you're recruiting at this level and you're getting these amount of guys, you have to have NFL guys to go up against other NFL guys.
Yeah. What other position group stands out to you on the 2-year look there?
I mean, tight end is definitely one there. I think it kind of maybe would get overlooked because it's not as many guys, right? There's only 3 guys there, with the 2 guys they have in this class with Ian Premer and Preston Friesel, who, we are huge fans of both those guys. And I think they both have a chance to be absolute studs. And I gave James Flanagan a 95 grade, and I think he was a borderline.
I think he's like a sleeper guy that no one really talks about because he was an early enrollee. He's coming in late, and we've kind of heard some stuff about him, and just from an athletic standpoint, that's kind of simmering there that we're monitoring. He's one where it's like he could really show something. So it's a good point on James Flanagan there, Jimmy.
Well, and I think too, and if I look at where, like, say that 2020 Notre Dame team that went to the playoff and went undefeated in the regular season and beat Clemson at home there, like, part of what made their identity was the strength of the tight end group and, what they had at that position, because they had Tremble and Mayer and Brock Wright. And Cole Kmet left early, or else he could have been a part of that too, right? And I think when you get these number of guys in this class, you have a chance to kind of you can do that. And I'm not saying that they're going to do that because obviously they got receivers too, and they're going to want to do these things, but it's just like you can kind of pick your poison and play at a high level. And also it's like, it's an odds game. What are the chances that you're going to have one of these guys end up becoming, a first or second round pick stud? Very high, very high. You might have 2 out of the 3 might happen, right? Like, right. Who knows? Maybe 3 out of 3. It's possible.
Yeah. So it's just like, I love that athleticism that they have. Like, they're such good athletes. Like, I think that's what Notre Dame, like, that's the thing with, like Georgia and the way they use their tight ends, where it's like they're vertical threats. and being able to get vertical with your tight end is also something that I think is kind of a distinction between just having a tight end, right? Like if you can be vertical with those guys, they're very hard to cover. Speaking from experience, like tight ends they're wide. They're just hard to get around. Like if you're on the back of a wide receiver, like you don't really feel like super threatened. But if you're on the back of a tight end, it just makes it a whole lot worse, and so I kind of I like that. I know a lot of people have this thing with, no, like I know Matt talks about like Notre Dame's got to stop taking so many tight ends. Like the idea that Notre Dame has like 3 tight ends in a class. Like, if they decide to move on Evan Jacobson, whatever he decides to make a decision. But for me, it's like I think about things from a like, man, what do I not like dealing with? And it's the types of tight ends that Notre Dame has brought in, right? Sometimes they bring in tight ends, and I'm like, yeah. He's a 12 personnel guy, but he's got to be like in line, and he's got to be like the types of guys that Notre Dame are bringing in. They can be in line, but really, I'm thinking about them going up the seam, and it would make me uncomfortable as a defensive back. Like I don't like the thought of that. I think a slept on group from 2025 that kind of gets a little bit more has gotten rosier as the process has moved on for them. And then with some of the guys that Notre Dame's bringing in 2026 is D-line. And I know you've been like a huge Chris Burgess guy for a very long time. He kind of blew up near the end, like way at the end, like after signing day when he went to some all-star games and looked good. I know Notre Dame, the program is excited about him. I know you've heard some really good things about him as well. And now you bring in those edge guys with Rodney Dunham, Ebenezer Ewatade, and then you've got Tiki Hola. Notre Dame hopes to bring in Elijah Golden on the interior. Now things start to look a lot better in the in the future for the 2025 group. And you talked about how like Notre Dame not bringing in 5 on the D line maybe indicates that they feel pretty good about that 2025 group.
Yeah, and then obviously too that you want to, because you're taking that many guys there, they want to get a look at it and then they can reassess as they go along. But I think that specifically with edge, I think about that 2020 or that 2016 edge group, which is obviously like an historic group by how good it was. You get 4 NFL draft picks with Khalid Kareem, Dalen Hayes, Julian Okwara, and Ade Ogundeji, right? And Ogundeji was the project, the guy who was, needed time to kind of bake a little bit to develop some time in the oven. And he obviously became like a really great player later on. And then there's also Jameer Jones in there who ended up like he was an undrafted free agent, but he ended up being like a really good player for Notre Dame, especially in his last year, and made a 53-man roster in the NFL. Like he was a good player too. So you end up having like 5 guys there. But if you look at kind of like how they followed up with it, is like pretty bleak what they did to kind of like follow up there. And that is also part of why I think like, they had Foskey obviously, but there wasn't any other Foskeys in there, right? They didn't have that, and they were kind of missing that. And it's been a slow build up to kind of get to where they're at now, where they at like currently, and then where they're going to be, because I like Burgess a lot. He might grow into a defensive tackle, and I don't think that's a bad thing if that happens, because that'll strengthen that area. And I already like what they have. Like a Dunham and Iwatade both have sky high ceilings. Like Dunham absolutely could be like a super high NFL pick, elite guy, 3 and out, top end pass rush in college football. Ewatade, and I know whatever the whole like rankings are trash thing, and it is in a sense, but the whole point of on 3/rivals putting him in that top 20, it's they have him 20th overall as their 20th overall prospect, which might seem wild, but if you were going to say just based on ceiling of what he could be, he absolutely could be a guy who becomes a first round pick one day, right? And also, I really like Dom Hulak. Like, Dom Hulak has been absolutely slept on. He's another guy who's like a multi-sport guy, play 3 sports, lacrosse, hockey as well. Like, he's 240 pounds. He's 6'4", 240 pounds. He's got like close to 33-inch arms. He's not small. Like, people think he's small because he was playing all these multiple positions, but he's a guy that once he kind of settles into, I think, playing the edge and learning to play that, I think he has a chance to be great. Like, really, really good. He ran a 40 at 240 pounds last year. He ran a 4.65 at 240 pounds. Like, that is ridiculous. Like, that is really impressive for a kid,
especially so for a high school player.
Yes,
I think people think
that's not normal.
Yeah, like, I think people think about 40 times for high school kids the same way,
like their NFL combine. Yeah,
like combine. Like, people make that comparison, and you shouldn't. You should almost actually add like or take off a 10th. You know what I mean? Because once you get in a program and then you get into a situation where it's like you get ready to run the 40, they're going to take a 10th off. So like, that's kind of how I look at it. Like, if I see a wide receiver, it's like he's run a 4.5 something, then I think, ooh, that's just like a 4.4 guy. So obviously, like, that was something that like really clued me into Jeremiah Love, whose like high school tape was good, but it wasn't insane, right? But then he had a verified 4.38 40. And I'm like, listen, this is a high school player running a 4.38. Like, he could break 4.3 at the combine if he actually, I mean, it might be a little bit different now because he's going to bulk up and that'll hurt as well. But like, from an explosiveness standpoint, like, it was pretty clear, like 4.38 is a 4.38. That's legit. So for Hulak to run that's very, very impressive, just to add some context for everybody.
Yeah. And the one thing too, and you don't want to like overrate, because sometimes like 40s can be it doesn't matter in the long run in terms of if a guy runs a slow 40. There's a lot of guys who run slow 40s, like Julian Okwara, for example, was like 212 pounds and ran like a 5 flat 40.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he was a lot more explosive than that. And he had other indicators, which is like, the jumps and stuff like that were, but that's the thing with Hulak too. He's like, he had a 4.26 short shuttle, and I believe it was a 9.7 broad jump at 240 pounds. Like, that is big time. Like, those are very, very impressive numbers. And that's why too, and he's a guy who did all these different skill sets. He played multiple positions. He played offense. He played some safety. He played all these things. So he's not going to come in as like this finished product. But when that guy has the tools there, he's got a chance to really be something special. So I think he's a guy who can really, really surprise people. And I'm excited about his potential. And then I think overall, like, you mentioned the D tackles in this class, if it's, they get Golden and Hola, really like both those guys. And I think a lot is going to depend, where they're at with some of the other guys, like in terms of physical development with like Gordy Selfstead, who is like super duper long. And he's like 260 pounds right now. And what's that guy going to look like? What's that guy going to look like in August? What's that guy going to look like in December and spring of next year? What is he going to look like there? And the same thing with Joseph Rafe, who I thought, like, I wanted to see him get bigger over since he committed, and he didn't really kind of add that weight. And I don't know, maybe maybe he wasn't concentrating on it. And that is what kind of, held them back from doing it. But it'll be interesting to me because I liked his earlier film than I liked his senior film. And that was also something that was, for me, the exact same way that I felt about Riley Mills. And then he ended up being a pretty darn good player. So we'll see there. And then Dixon, I don't know. To me, Dixon is probably like a bigger wild card, but he's 320 something pounds. And we'll just see what happens with his body and where he's at.
Yeah, I think there's a nice bridge between the D line that Notre Dame has now and to the more the more established. I don't want to say established. That's not the right word. The more the bigger likelihood of being hits from the 2026 class, because I feel like 2025 is projecty. You know, like you like
there's
them.
more of them, yeah.
Yeah, you like them, but it's like they're also kind of like it might take a couple years to simmer on that. And so I think it's a nice bridge because what they have, like, I think it's really important that like someone like Elijah Hughes has multiple years, because like that might be very, very useful for Notre Dame to have him in there for 2025 and 2026. Notre Dame's O-line classes, I feel like, are similar in that, like, Will Black at this time last year, you were very, very high on him. The services weren't as high on him. And then On3 kind of did the thing where it's like Will Black was like the number 2 overall prospect in the class or whatever. And there's something similar is happening with Grayson McKeo in this class, where they don't have like super highly ranked guys. McKeo is not highly ranked, but then I think they put him in the top 20 overall, I think it was, or 15 or 13 or whatever it might be.
I think he's 13th. Yeah.
13th. Yeah. And so as the year went on, like Will Black, all of a sudden, all the services caught up on that. And he was like a top 50 prospect. Something similar could happen with Grayson McKeo, but I feel like the rest of the offensive line prospects are like guys that you like that weren't rated as high. So I'm just curious how you feel like the offensive line classes have kind of come about, I don't want to say come about, how they've come together from 2025 to 2026.
I mean, I like the combination of the two, especially like at tackle, right? Because
like, I feel like this exercise is especially important for the two O-line classes rather than looking at them in a vacuum from year to year.
100%, because last class was more tackle heavy and this one is more interior heavy. And I think if you look at where they're at with the two classes in general, because I would have as offensive tackles Will Black, Matty Augustine, Owen Strebig, who could end up playing guard, but Grayson McKeo, and then Charlie Tom. And you look at Tom and McKeo in this class, and McKeo is the exact same as Ewatade, like them putting him there. It's the same thing where you're looking at him and you're like, here's this guy who's a monster, who's played 1 year on the offensive line, and he's a really good athlete. He can do a freaking backflip, at 280 pounds. Like
I was thinking about that backflip. I feel like that, like, in all seriousness,
it does.
I think it matters.
It does influence a lot.
In terms of the rankings.
It does. It does actually matter. Well, I can 100% guarantee you. Oh God, I can't. I'm blanking on his name now. But there was a guy who went to Texas A&M who was like a 5-star receiver guy. That everybody loved him, and I hated him because he was like, they loved him because he did like 5 million back handsprings in a row at the opening, and I was like, I got to tell you, this guy couldn't catch a cold. He had horrible hands, and he was super undisciplined, and it was just like, this guy's not a good receiver. He is a good athlete, but he is not a good receiver. Like, I understand why you would have him as a 4-star, but to have this guy as like a top 20 kid in the country, I was like, they don't just do flips in football, right? Like, it's not gymnastics. He's got to be good at football, and he wasn't good at football yet. And that's a little bit like Charlie Tom, I guess, because he's a guy who hasn't played offensive tackle. He's doing like a extra year at prep school to do it. But man, he's got crazy traits, and whatever. I'm not going to say he can't. I mean, I've seen him block better than that dude could catch, so I'm not worried about that part of it. But I think it's not Terry. It's not Terry Bussey. Terry Bussey was a stud.
I feel like this
in
is
high school.
from a few.
This is from a few. It's from a few years back. He's a Jimbo, very much a Jimbo.
Yeah.
Peak Jimbo of like getting a guy like that, and that guy never becoming anything. Anyways, but I like what they have there because I think, I mean, Will Black, sky high ceiling, super highly rated, obviously. You look at Makio, I always thought he was going to be a riser anyways. It's just, hey, some of these people are going to giving him a rise right now in terms of where his ranking is. So we'll see where it all ends up with him, but I do think he's going to end up being pretty highly rated. I do think what's his face is going to go. Tom could really rise up too, but even if he doesn't, I don't think it matters. It's to me, it's like similar to Matty Augustine, who I think has a really, really high ceiling, but he was a guy who played in the Northeast, similar to Tom, not getting the exact same exposure, not going up against the same guys, but I'll say this: Christian McCollum, knows the area as well as anybody, covers that area, knows people around there that are involved with like training kids, with the high school coaches there, knows them better than I definitely anyone that I know in terms of that Northeast corner, in terms of recruits and the blue chips. And he's seen so many guys over the years, and there were guys who told him that they think Matty Augustine is going to be better than Will Black. And, and that's not nothing. Like, there are people who are very high on Matty Augustine, and I think he's got a chance to be really, really good too. And obviously not all these guys are going to play as it always kind of works out. Mm-hmm. But when you see that number of those guys, you want to get two like multi-year starters out of there. And I think they're going to have it. And there's a good chance that those 2 or 3 could end up being first round draft picks. And and that falls in line with where Notre Dame's at, and where they want to be at tackle all the time. You want Joe Alden, Blake Fisher, right? You want Ronnie Stanley and Zach Martin, Stanley and McGlinchey. That's what you want, right? You want to have those level of guys there all at the same time. And I think that's really, really important. And it's also important that they got all those guys, because it gives a chance for everyone talking about Gregory Patrick. He struggled at the thing. I think he's probably better suited to be an interior guy, maybe a center. And this kind of gives him an opportunity to do that, rather than when like Robert Hainsey was there. And I mean, he was a good player at tackle, and don't want to say he wasn't, but he's playing center in the NFL, and he would have been better at center at Notre Dame, I think, or guard. Right. And I think there's guys there that I like. I think Sullivan Garvin's got a super high ceiling. I like what I saw from Cam Herron. I
love Sullivan Garvin.
I really, really like Sullivan Garvin. He's a really good athlete. He's mean. Cam Herron is the only thing I worry about. Cam Herron is just the size, but I also saw him compete against good Notre Dame players in spring this year and do pretty decent, like much better than you would see from a regular early enrollee center. So I think that's really encouraging. And then I think with like Merrill and Nichols, I think both those guys are big bodies who are going to kind of need to get into the right kind of shape, and be there. But those are absolutely the kind of guys that like had success and were like kind of Wisconsin type of offensive guard types that thrived under Joe Rudolph. So, they all got a chance to be pretty good. And I think with a lot of it, everybody kind of wants like the Quentin Nelsons, and of course, who wouldn't want Quentin Nelson? But with a lot of it, and even a guy like Billy Schrauth, there were some people who said, "Oh, Billy Strouth's going to be Quentin Nelson." Well, he hasn't even been close to that, and it's nothing against Strouth. He's been a good player, but it's like people put unfair expectations on these kids to be something like that right away. People thought, well, Billy Strouth's going to start right away as redshirt freshman and everything. So no, it takes some time with a lot of these guys. But the point is, you get enough of these guys, and these guys stick around, and they develop into the kind of players you want them to.
Yeah. So they have that kind of the possibility of star power with Will Black and Grayson McKeo. And you feel good about, kind of where they're at. But there's also the combination of the skill sets that they have, and it all kind of marries together and creates something really cohesive, and you like what the whole group is over the 2-year period. It's kind of similar to VSR Media in that way, Jamie, where there's the star power of what they can do, but also the combination of assets and skill sets that they can bring to your media company, right? So you should go with them. Of course, founded by Notre Dame Football, pregame host and Emmy Award-winning anchor Vahid Sadrazadeh, VSR Media provides professional and cinematic video and photo. Whether you're looking for a collegiate or pro-level highlight reel, have a personal story to tell, or are aiming to diversify and grow your business, VSR Media specializes in short and long-form video storytelling, social media management, and website design. VSR Media also captures professional headshots, senior and sports photos. Contact them at vsrmediacompany.com. Mention Irish Sports Daily to receive 20% off your first project. Visit them online or give them a call at 574-800-9106. Let's talk about quickly. Let's running back Nolan James, Javan Osborne, and Jonas Walton. There, I think we feel good about that trio, right?
Great, yeah.
And I think the nice thing is that it's like Javan Osborne to me is like you're gonna give him the ball first, second down, and he's got some versatility there, but you're gonna give him the ball on first, second down. He's gonna be your back. He's got great instincts. Love the way he runs. I love the venom that he runs with. And Jonas Walton obviously has he catches the ball out of the backfield. He returns kickoffs. He's got that skill set. Nolan James and Jonas Walton's got some verified 100-meter times as well. So he's like a 10-6 guy. Nolan James has that I'm in on third down kind of guy, right? I think he can be in on first and second down. I think they can all be a first and second down guy, but you can kind of see where Nolan James would have a role and a skill set maybe a little bit different than these other two backs, right? So I think that looks really good. I don't think we need to convince anybody that these running backs are really good players and people should be excited. I do wonder about positions like linebacker, right? Where, it's very good that they landed Madden Framo, because then you'd really be wondering about the star power of this group. I know you're excited about someone like Jacoby Clapper, for instance. I know you left Thomas Davis. There are some questions about the other linebackers in the 2025 group, though. Like Ko Okia, it's hard because I feel like he's going to be a hit, because I think his brother was going to be a hit if he didn't stop getting injured, right? That would be great, because I've loved it every time he was on the field for Notre Dame. I feel like he's brought a lot to them. But beyond Madden Framo, it's like how much star power has there been, especially when compared to previous classes when you've got Drake Bowen, Jalen Snead, Jaden Osbury, KVA, guys like that.
Yeah, I think there's probably a little bit less star power there in general, but I also kind of think that one of the things at linebacker is there's so many teams that have linebackers, that play like championship level defense where the guys aren't 5 stars. I mean, there's very few 5-star actual top 50 linebackers every year. There's usually like 3 or something like that. It's
and that's like a draft position thing.
Yes. And I'm not saying of course you want KVA or you want Anthony Hill from Texas. Of course you want those guys. For sure. But you can get some friggin' amazing linebackers. And I think if you look at where, Jeremiah Wosu-Koromoa obviously was not a guy who was super highly ranked. Like he was a
like
3-star composite.
700s. Yeah, he was in the 700s.
And
he was very low.
And, and then Drew Tranquil as well, too, right? Like there were guys that weren't kind of considered to be linebackers
for that matter.
I mean, Coney was like a top 250 kind of kid, whatever, right? Like he definitely was not seen as like he was going to have the career that he had if you just base it on rankings, right? And there's so many guys like that. And but I do like the linebacker group there. Like I think Frermo, because of his versatility and his just overall like how big he's going to be and it's just and just like the size speed combination, I think he's got a chance to be really special. But Saka, I think I think he came in too big right now, so it's gonna be interesting to see like him kind of slim down. But he had an awesome senior year. He was a dominant player as a senior, and like you said, I think Kia is probably one of the most underrated guys out of this entire 2-class group. Like, I think he has a chance to be really, really good. I also think that, like Clapper, like you said, I'm a huge fan of Clapper.
I think Clapper's good, man. I think he's really good. I don't know.
He's just a football player.
It's what it looks. It's what it's supposed to look like for me. So I think he's really good.
And I also think too, like, Thomas Davis, it's kind of like because he was such an early commitment. I mean, he's got a chance to be a stud. And also you just see, like we talked about the other day about these guys who are viewed as a certain way, but they have like the pedigree because their dad played in the league or whatever. It's like those guys hit a lot and usually hit bigger than they're projected. So I wouldn't say, it's not that same when you look at that, like what you said of like the current guys that they have that are like they had those classes back to back that kind of produce those guys. But they're still pretty good at linebacker. It's kind of like I don't know if I would call it like the most like under the radar or like but I wouldn't be surprised if you'd rank it right now, you would put them like kind of like how we've done most of these things. I know we haven't gone like 1 to 2 or whatever, but you'd have it closer to the bottom, but it's only because everything else is so strong. And if you told me it ended up near the top at the end of it, it wouldn't be surprising.
Yeah. I mean, Thomas Davis, I feel like his dad too. Like, I think the problem is he's not like a super athlete, right? He doesn't have those athletic traits. And I don't know where his dad was ranked or whatever, but I kind of feel like he's similar in that way. But then he came in, he was played great, so like a really good football player. So, like I'm fine to count on that, right? I feel good about making a bet there. It's interesting. I feel like wide receiver. I feel like 2025 is most helped by the fact that they all kind of look good in the spring. I feel like it's less for 2025 wideouts. I feel like it's less in conjunction with 26, and the fact that like Elijah Burris looked immediately good. Scrap Richardson showed some things much earlier than I think people projected. People within the program projected him to show things, and I think Jerome Bettis Jr. was physically like more impressive than I think people thought as well. So it's like I think people were already feeling better about 2020, the 2025 class. And now with 2026, you brought in real speed, you brought in real pedigree, you brought in like a top level type of wide receiver in Kadon Finley. Like I think the way that 2026 fell together really goes well with the 2025 guys who it looks like they're going to at least have some solid players who are going to be fit in and play well for Notre Dame within the program. And now you've got some guys with some real upside in, Kadon Finley. I think Bubba Frazier has some real upside there. I think Dylan Faison has some upside, at least it's similar to his brother, who's obviously a very key player for Notre Dame. And then you got Devin Fitzgerald, who we feel really good about. And then you got Braden Robinson, who is like a perfect kind of flyer because of the speed aspect. So I think that in conjunction with the fact that the 25 guys who people were not, to say the least, people were not very excited about. And then you've got the 26 guys who people are a lot more excited about, and they fit the kind of skill sets that Notre Dame needed. I feel like they don't have that star guy like you see at defensive back, right? Or maybe even at running back, right? Or tight end for that matter. But this is a very solid group and something that Mike Brown desperately needed in 2026.
Yeah, and I think also when you look at 2026 and them taking 5 guys, that changes how you view them taking 3 in the previous one, because there are a lot of people said, well, they should take 4. Well, if they're taking 4 just to get another guy there, and it's not a guy who's at the level of one of the guys that they just got in this class, then no, then they made the right choice. And I think they probably did based on how it turned out. Yeah. And I would say the one thing it is missing is like the high end, star power, that you would want to see. But I think those guys are hard to attract with kind of, we've gone over the all the reasons for it. And the main thing is what they need is just like good players throughout, and like enough guys that you're not in the situations that they were for. Like, you can't have a 3-year run that they just had. Like, that isn't good enough. That you can't have that at Notre Dame, where you're like, man, we need Bo Collins to hit in the portal. Man, we need, this to happen. Like, you can't have that happen every year. That is troublesome. So like, I think of Penn State right now, and I see, they're ranked number 1 by a lot of people kind of heading into the season. It's a lot of it's because of, the people they have returning, and they're putting a lot on Trevor Pena to be like that dude.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm not saying he's a bad player, but he wasn't really like not wide receiver 1 for Syracuse. They kind of had like 3 guys. Like, I would say Gadsden, even though he was a tight end, he's like kind of a bigger wide receiver. He was kind of their wide receiver 1 that I would say, if you're going to say out of that group. And they also had Meeks, who was another, second team all ACC guy for them. So if he's the main guy for Penn State and they don't have anybody else, like, how's that going to look? And also, the Big Ten is a better league than the ACC and all of these kind of things. Once you get in the playoff, is that guy going to get open against Leonard Moore? Is he going to get open against Christian Gray? Is he going to?
Yeah.
You have to ask those questions, because I don't think their receivers were actually as bad as it looked in the game against Notre Dame last year. I mean, they would have been helped if they kept those guys and added Trevor Pena. So you don't want to be in those situations where you're just like, man, we need this so bad. Or you don't want to be in the situation that so many of like Arkansas is like basically got to replace their whole like top 8 receivers from last year, just in terms of just total receptions. And Miami, top 5, 6 guys from last year are gone. Like, you never want to be in those situations. You want to be in situations where you're like building it up. And, a guy like TJ Jones can go from like, man, this guy's a good player, to, hey, he is a different level as a senior and whatever. And obviously you want to have Michael Floyd's, and you want to have Will Fullers, and you want to have all of these guys. But if you don't have enough of the other guys too, you're going to be in trouble. And I think they're building it up. And I'm frankly, like, I'm really excited about Elijah Burris. Yeah. And I know there's more guys that are like in this class right now that are, getting more hype, but I really think that, Elijah Burris got a chance to be a really, really good player for Notre Dame.
Yeah. Just like the perfect type of like, this is a wide receiver. You know, you need guys. I think Kadon Finley's similar to that. I think Kadon Finley's a little bit better prospect because I think he's a little bit better athlete. But there's like, hey, these are wide receivers, and you need that. You need that. Listen, I've held off on the quarterback conversation this entire time. To be honest, like I just like it does not fall in line with the rest of what Notre Dame's building. And it's a pretty important position, Jamie, for that, right? Like it could kind of like Notre Dame is, and not just Notre Dame, but college football is in this kind of situation where people are paying a lot to hang on to their guys so that they don't go into the portal. And I know that Notre Dame has a situation at quarterback where, you know, CJ Carr has multiple years or Kenny Minchie has multiple years, right? They both could play 4, to be honest. If those two players are what we think they are, then they have 2 years, right? Either one will start this year and then play next year and then move on. So you have 2 years, and Notre Dame is, you know, Blake Hebert. People can say, I'm sure he could, at best, he's a good quarterback, right? And he's serviceable. He could come in and play snaps for you in a football game, right? And Noah Grubbs, I don't know what his ceiling is. And we've kind of talked about it before, where it's like his skill set doesn't really match what college football is right now. Certainly not what Notre Dame's offense is right now. And I don't know how much upside there is from him standing just in the pocket. So that quarterback is a big deal. And so I think this is the one thing where it's like, if we're pouring cold water on the whole conversation, it's this position. It's 2 straight cycles, which you really can't have. You can't have that.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I don't want to be too down on this, because I don't think they're like awful players or anything like that. But they're also not, in my opinion, the caliber of player that fits in with the rest of the class and what Notre Dame kind of wants to be. So that's kind of where I'm at with it.
Yeah. Well, I don't look at either of those guys and think these guys are going to be national championship quarterbacks. And it's kind of what it boils down to. And also, too, when you look at, Notre Dame got, I think, deservedly got a lot of praise for bringing in Kenny Minchie and CJ Carr in back-to-back classes. And you're like, all right. And then obviously it looked like, oh, they're going to have Deuce Knight. And then looked really great for 3. And then it's like they didn't get Dante Moore in the one class, but they recovered and got Kenny Minchie. And hey, maybe they'll be proven right with Blake Hebert, and that will end up being, a great call for them, right? Like, and
to be clear, I could just be wrong, right? That is possible.
It could happen.
Yeah, it's with complete humility that I make these comments. I'm just giving my opinion.
But I mean, certainly, I think there were other guys that I think had higher upside that they didn't get, as a response to losing Deuce Knight. And then I also think that Grubbs, obviously, they really liked him. He's a guy they've went in on very early. But in general, it's not a great sign when a guy, is a 2-year starter or like a 3-year starter in high school and played like that much. He's got that much film, and he goes to the Elite 11. He doesn't make the Elite 11. Like that is generally not a great sign. And like, it's not everything, but
here's why, in my opinion, it's worse for him than another quarterback, because if he's going to be good, he has to be the type of player that
he has to be the guy that shines at that thing. He has to be like the best 7-on-7 guy. He's got to be the guy who's looking at a workout. You're like, whew, man, like
Yeah.
Just let's get the NIL package ready, right? Like that's how the guy has to look.
Like
in
if
those
Kenny
settings.
Minchie doesn't look great at it, I kind of get it, right? Because it's like that he's mobile, he does a lot more things.
But he does look good in those settings.
Exactly.
Though, yeah,
exactly.
But, yeah.
That's the thing. He didn't have to, and he did anyway. So
yeah,
that's kind of where I get
that totally. And that's so people can say what they want. I know we've talked about it before, and people get upset. It's like you're judging this guy. It's like, what, I mean, I'll wait till I want to see his senior year. I hope he has a great senior year and he looks amazing. And all of a sudden, everybody, they're like, wow, we made a mistake here. They got to move up his ranking, and he looks like that just elite guy. And Notre Dame was, man, they couldn't have been more right in him being that kind of guy. That would be great. That would be awesome. That is the ideal thing. But I'd say as it stands right now, as a follow-up to, Blakey Bear in the other class, it doesn't give me total confidence that they won't have to, hit a home run in 2027 with who they get, and also probably go back into the portal at some time if those guys aren't what they're at, because believe me, they will go into a situation. It's kind of like the same thing where they went into, the year where Buckner got hurt and then Pine was there. It was like they made the right move. They had to go in the portal, just like last year. They had to go in the portal. Like it was not. Yeah, Steve Angeli, he looked great in the thing. They weren't going to go 14-2 with Steve Angeli as the quarterback the whole year. They just weren't. They needed what Riley Leonard could bring to be able to do that. And then I don't think that Minchie or Carr would have been ready to do what they're probably going to do this year, right? So and I think that's, you don't want to end on a down note, but it's kind of what it is right now. And that's also too why if they went and said, well, you know what, maybe we're going to make a run at somebody else and try to get 2 quarterbacks in the class. Even if that guy isn't like, everyone's like, well, get Dia Bell or whatever. It's like, they kind of blew it already. It's probably not going to happen. But if they said go after somebody else too, even if that person isn't the highest, whatever, it's like throw some numbers at it and see if him or Grubbs or Hebert, one of those guys, maybe one of those guys will be the guy. And I think that's not a bad idea. If you were going to look at like what they could add to the class, to me, I'd put that on the list of, if you see a guy, you love his senior film, there's always guys like that. Mason Graham was committed to Boise State, played the first month of the season at Servite, just absolutely killing people, just dominating, got the Michigan offer, went to official visit, committed. He became a top 5 pick. It can happen. So, and sometimes it happens too. Like Jackson Dart was a guy who became a first round pick, was not a top 50 kid
he
at
rose
that point.
He rose up very, very late in the process.
Stroud was also a later riser, but he won Elite 11, but he was not, I mean, at the Elite 11, I distinctly remember this because I was there. Like we were having lunch with guy who works for a Baylor site, and he's like, yeah, it's between Baylor and Cal for CJ Stroud. That's what it was at the time. And then all of a sudden, Ohio State was like, what? Okay. And they went for it. And guess what? Like they ended up, and they already had a guy in the class who was a kid, but they were like, what are we, stupid? We got to do this. So you never know. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens there. Listen, the rest of the class, we have extreme confidence in the rest of the position groups in 25 and 26. We have extreme confidence in, and it is what it is at quarterback. And look, of course, anytime you kind of talk down on a prospect or whatever it might be, people don't really like that, right? Like, oh, you're going to give the kid a chance or whatever. Like, it kind of works both ways. Like, I'm very high on Preston Friesel, right? I look at him. I don't care what his ranking is. And I look and I say, I think he's going to be at least a day 2 pick. That's just my opinion. And so it works the other way as well. And it is what it is. But we should be very excited about, the 25 and 26 classes overall. So that's going to do it for today. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. If you like what you heard, hit that like, hit subscribe, hit the notification bell. So whenever it is, we are going live. We are scheduled to be back next week. Mike should be back from vacation. So we're going to have Power Hour on Monday and then Hit and Hustle Tuesday, Thursday. So we'll be with you. Have a good rest of your day. I'll keep everyone updated on the message board about my son's baseball situation because I know everyone is very interested in that. So we'll talk to you next week. Have a good rest of your week. Keep hitting and hustling.